Ois Gimel, line 26. And we finished off the last paragraph pointing out how there's a big difference in the type of the emphasis of the connection of Golus to what's going to be when Mashiach comes. That in the Alter Rebbe's Maimer and Torah we explained that there's Haboim. The Haboim is connected with Yashrish Yaakov, that the idea of those that come into Golus. Through the mitzvahs in the time of Golus, we have the concept of the level of Yashrish Yaakov, the revelation, etc., that you have either the mitzvahs has to be rooted in the Yidden, or the Yidden are rooted in mitzvahs, however we translate that. Versus the Tzemach Tzedek's Maimer, he talks about Haboim, that's in one explanation, that there's a level of going into Golus Mitzrayim. And another thing he explains is Yashrish Yaakov, that there's the idea that the revelation that comes out when will be Mashiach's times. But he doesn't connect that the mitzvahs and the revelations of Mashiach's times is dependent upon specifically Haboim coming into Golus. It's in general. In general, we have the revelation of mitzvahs. So we left off by a question: what is the difference? Why does the Tzemach Tzedek not make a distinction between the fulfillment of mitzvahs in the times of Golus versus the fulfillment of mitzvahs in the times of the Beis Hamikdash? Whereas the Alter Rebbe in Torah Or does make that difference. He refers to it specifically to the time of Golus. So to be able to explain that, the Rebbe is now going to introduce a beautiful concept about two aspects of the fulfillment of mitzvahs. Two things that mitzvahs accomplish. One idea is that it's mamshich, it draws down a very high level of light that we spoke about before, all the way from the shayrish, like the roots of a tree that's under the ground. This mitzvah is considered the roots. The Torah is considered just like the tree itself. The Torah is only from the Chachma, from the beginning of Seder Ishtalshus. Mitzvahs is higher than Seder Ishtalshus. So mitzvahs draw down a very, very high level of Gilui Elokus. There's another component of mitzvahs, though, that is about transformation. We're dealing with the physical, we're dealing with the body, we're dealing with the animal soul. Over there, we are transforming darkness to light. And based on which component of mitzvahs we're talking about, that's what takes precedence, or what's more valuable in the equation, Golus or the times of the Beis Hamikdash. Let's see it inside again, bottom of the fourth page of the Maimer, Ois Gimel, line 26. The idea behind this is the advantage and quality of the fulfillment of mitzvahs. Over Torah study, there are two components. That which we draw down through fulfilling mitzvahs is much higher than the hamshacha that we draw down through Torah study, kanal, sif aleph, like we learned before in Ois aleph, that Torah is from the level of Chachma, which is the beginning of Seder Ishtalshus, whereas mitzvahs is the level of the Yashrish Yaakov, the root, like the root that's the source of the tree. It's much higher and gives and makes sure that the tree remains. And that's why Kol Shemaisav Merub Mechachmasa, if his actions, his mitzvahs are more than his wisdom, so then it's like a tree that has strong roots and more roots than it has branches. So the root that the mitzvahs indicate, that shows on higher than Seder Ishtalshus. So the fact that mitzvahs are higher than Torah, there's two components to it. That is the component of the hamshacha that mitzvahs bring down. Then there's another advantage that mitzvahs have, and that's also even Torah, over Torah. So he says on the top of the next page, top of page Tes, the fact that in the fulfilling of mitzvahs, there is the advantage of transforming darkness to light. Because refining the body and refining the nafsha bahamis and this portion of the world will be ikarai de maisa mitzvahs is primarily through the actions of mitzvahs, because with mitzvahs we are engaging with our body, we're engaging with the world, and even the nafsha bahamis is more involved in the process than when we're learning Torah, that we're more disassociated from the world and our body and so on. It's all a spiritual endeavor. So the true transformation of darkness to light comes about through mitzvahs. So there's two aspects that he explained now is in mitzvahs. Amongst the differences between these two aspects of the mitzvahs, whether it's about drawing down the divine light from above, or whether it is about transforming the darkness, that which is drawn down. The hamshacha, the gilul, of course, that's higher than Seder Ishtalshlus, that's brought down through the fulfillment of mitzvahs, is in the times of the Beis HaMikdash, greater than the times of Golus. Because the hamshacha, that's through the actions of mitzvahs, is primarily when a person does their actions in a way of bittul. The bittul is more of an assurance and more of something that draws down from above, just like a king and his subjects. When the subjects have coronated the king and they have shown themselves to be bottle to the king, so then the king will be a king over there and reign over them and reign over them. So therefore, if we look from a bittul perspective, when did Yidden have more bittul? Not in the time of Golus, in the times of the Beis HaMikdash. Line 8, since the idea of bittul is primarily in the times of the Beis HaMikdash. First of all, the noise was that Bezman Golus EF Shalias Habitl Dishtachava Bitl Pnimish Bodavka Mesadari Balakus. In addition to the fact that at the time of Golus it's impossible to be the bittul of bowing down. That the bowing down indicates an inner state of bittul. That's a result of seeing godliness. Where do we see that the inner state of bittul connected with bowing down has to do with seeing godliness? Like we actually say in davening, we are not able to go up and to see and to bow down before you. What's this language of seeing and bowing down, which indicates that one is dependent on the other? Since we cannot go up to the Beis HaMikdash and see godliness, but Mela, the result of that is, the consequence of that is, we cannot have the idea of bowing down, which shows on an inner form of bittul, and we're not allowed to bow down. It's also to bow down because we're not in the Beis HaMikdash. We cannot have the full prostrating down on the floor and on the ground, etc. Even what we do in the middle of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, that's only an imitation because we have to put something between us and the ground and so on. So not only are we incapable of having the level of bowing down in a way of full bowing down like in the times of the Beis HaMikdash Ishtachavah, because we don't have a Gilui Lakuz, there's another level, a lower level of bittul, which is indicated by actually bowing, not total prostrating oneself on the ground. There's also the level of the level of v'nigam habitl hachitzoni, bitl the kriya, even the external type of bitl, the bitl of the bending ourselves over. So even there, that comes out of a comprehension of godliness. Why do I bend my head? That means I take my own intellect, and my own intellect I bow before a greater thing. In other words, my intellect recognizes something greater than me. So even though sheyeshna b'chlolos gam b'zman hagolus, even though the general idea of bowing down, as opposed to ishtachava, prostrating ourselves on the ground, is to be found generally in the time of golus, and that's why al pi halacha we bow down during certain parts of davening. We don't prostrate ourselves. So still in all, even that type of bowing down is not as it should be. It's not in the perfect sense. Since the comprehension and the grasp of godliness in the time of Golus is not a true comprehension, not a true grasp. In other words, like this, there is ishtachavoah versus kriya. Prostrating ourselves fully on the ground, head is the same level like the feet. That is a result of seeing godliness. We don't see godliness now at all in the time of Golus, so there's no ishtachavoah at all. And on top of that, in addition to that, even the bowing down, which is a result of a comprehension of godliness, which we do have in general in the time of Golus, it's not a full and complete type of bittul or a bittul chitzoni. This bowing down is considered an external bittul. Why? Because even our comprehension of godliness, the sight of godliness, is totally not there. Even the comprehension of godliness is not to be found in the time of Golus in a true fashion, and therefore even our bowing down is not the way it's supposed to be. So the Rebbe goes on and says, L'chein, therefore, hamshach ha'shayde kiyum ha'mitzvah b'zman habayis, that which was drawn down. Top of the next page, top of page Yud. The hamshacha of godliness that took place through the fulfillment of the mitzvahs in the times of the Beis HaMikdash was a much higher hamshacha, because the bittul was of a greater quality. Since the bittul was a greater quality, so therefore we could tap in to a much higher level of godliness. And even though, when we contrast the time of the Beis HaMikdash versus the time of Golus doesn't hold a candle to what took place in the times of the Beis HaMikdash. And in that itself, there's the Beis HaMikdash the way it was in the past, and the Beis HaMikdash of the future. So that main hamshachet of mitzvahs that draws down from a very high level, that's going to be when Mashiach comes. Because as we surely know, the bittul when Mashiach comes is going to be so much greater and so much more powerful than the bittul that we even experienced in the times of the Beis HaMikdash before the Golus. Because then when Mashiach comes, line 3, then the fulfillment of mitzvahs will be in the utmost perfect state. As we say in davening, like the mitzvahs of your will do the mitzvahs as you imagine the mitzvahs are, with your perfection, with your perceptions of how mitzvahs should be. So that is one component of mitzvahs. The component of mitzvahs that's supposed to draw down the oir or the key above, Golus is really not the place for that. The times of the Beis HaMikdash and ultimately Mashiach's times is for that type of hamshacha, because it's predicated on a bittul. It's based on a bittul. But there's another component of mitzvahs, so we said. The transformative nature of mitzvahs. This transformative accomplishment of mitzvahs, that mitzvahs transforms the darkness of the body, the animal soul, the item that he's using, the part of the world. So he says in line 5, the idea of transforming darkness to light, that occurs through the fulfillment of mitzvahs, will be ikir bezman hagolus. That's primarily the time of Golus. How come? Why is it more so in the time of Golus than in the times of the Beis HaMikdash or Mashiach's times? Because the darkness of the body and the animal soul and the world, the way they're in Golus, it's a much greater darkness than the darkness of all these things left to their own devices, meaning the way their darkness is in the times of the Beis HaMikdash. So it's the total opposite. In the times of the Beis HaMikdash, there's greater bittul. So that component of the mitzvahs is more powerful. In the times of Golus, the darkness is so much more powerful, so the transformation and the light that results in the transformation is so much greater in the time of Golus. By day kima mitzvah bezman Golus, through the fulfillment of mitzvahs in the time of Golus. Through fulfilling mitzvahs and Golus. Through that becomes the refining of the body. The way it's in Golus, even the darkness of Golus becomes transformed to darkness, which is a greater darkness than the darkness of the body in the world, and etc. In the times of the Beis Hamikdash. Fine. Now that we have made a distinction between these two parts of the mitzvahs and when is their most applicable time, now we're going to talk about how they result in what's going to happen when Mashiach comes. Line 12. Also, love in the future when Mashiach comes. Mitzvahs will be revealed. These two aspects of the fulfillment of mitzvahs. Now, whether in the times of the Beis Hamikdash or whether in the time of Golus, both of these things were not open to the eye necessarily. The revelation of the Hamshacha through the fulfillment of the mitzvahs itself, what the mitzvahs draw down, that will become revealed when Mashiach comes. And the revelation of what's being drawn down through refining and the transformation that happens through the mitzvah. So now the Rebbe is going to explain, even though earlier we said that Maseinu Avaydasenu throughout all the times is what results in the revelation of Mashiach's times, but based on what we just now said, there are certain actions that we do now that have more of a connection because of what it accomplished. So he says, line 16, the law the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya that the revelations of Mashiach's time is dependent on our actions and our service, and the Alter Rebbe doesn't stop over there. But he says, in the time of Golus, why is Alter Rebbe adding that? He could have just said, all our actions and service throughout the 6,000 years that the world exists, that causes the revelation that will be in the times of Mashiach comes. What is the Alter Rebbe trying to emphasize by saying the actions and the service throughout the time of Golus? Because the Alter Rebbe over there in Tanya is focusing on this latter, the secondary accomplishment of the mitzvahs. Over there in Tanya, he's talking about the advantage and quality of transforming darkness to light, the greater light that comes out of the darkness. And the revelation of this light that will be in Mashiach's times, the advantage and the greater light that comes out of the darkness, that type of quality, that transformative nature, that is dependent upon our avodah that we are doing specifically in the time of Golus. That is what accomplishes it. If not for the avodah of Golus, we wouldn't have such a great transformation of darkness, because in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, it wasn't such a great darkness. On the other hand, let's look to the other accomplishment or the other advantage that mitzvahs are supposed to do. It says in line 2 on page Aleph, the fact that when Mashiach comes, there will also be the revelation of the infinite light of Hashem, of the Hamshach that the mitzvahs themselves accomplish, not because of the transformative nature of mitzvahs. Over the bias is dependent primarily in our actions and service in the times of the Beis Hamikdash. Again, it's primarily. We also draw it down in the time of Golus. But where do we have a greater bittul and therefore a greater hamshacha of the Ein Sof in the times of the Beis Hamikdash? So each one of these eras and experiences contribute to Mashiach's times differently. The aspect of mitzvahs that has to do with the revelation of the Ein Sof is brought about more. That the revelation of that when Mashiach comes is brought about more through our mitzvahs in the times of the Beis Hamikdash. Though again, it's also brought about through our avoid in the time of Golus. And versus the revelation or the quality and advantage that comes about out of transforming the darkness, that is something that is has to do with the time of Golus. Okay. Now the Rebbe is going to pull this and be even more a wider net as well. Even though we said that there's the revelation of the mitzvah itself has to do primarily with the times of the Beis Hamikdash, and the ishapcha part of mitzvahs has to do with the time of Golus. Now the Rebbe is going to say even the revelation part has to do with the time of Golus as well. Though we said before, revelation has to do with Bittul, and Bittul has to do more with the time of the Beis Hamikdash. So he says in line 5, Yesh loymar, the fact that also the revelation of mitzvahs themselves is dependent on our actions and service now. Hagam shagam la'osid lavi yakiyum mitzvahs, though the also when Mashiach comes. I'm sorry, I misspoke before. Not that it's now in the time of Golus, but now as opposed to the time of la'osid lavi. Again, let's go back a little bit. We just now established that the mitzvahs, because of their bittul, are responsible for the gilui. So therefore, the mitzvahs in the times of the Beis Hamikdash help that when la'asid lavi there's going to be the revelation, it's going to be this higher revelation because the mitzvahs that we did with bittul in the times of the Beis Hamikdash. The Rebbe is going to explain now, but why do we even need the time of the Beis Hamikdash for that? We have Mashiach's times that we said is the greatest bittul. So if Mashiach's times is the greatest bittul, so the mitzvahs that we'll do in the times of Mashiach will bring down that great Gilui Oyer because it's going to be the greatest bittul. Why do we need even the mitzvahs of the time of the Beis Hamikdash, and surely the mitzvahs of the time of Golus, for the revelation of the mitzvahs itself, as opposed to the ishapcha of the mitzvahs? So he says, Hagam, again, line 6, Hagam shagam la'asid lavi yakiyum mitzvahs, though also when Mashiach comes, there will be the fulfillment of mitzvahs. V'adrab, and even more so, kiyum mitzvahs oz yibetach sashlemes, the fulfillment of mitzvahs when Mashiach comes will be in the ultimate perfect state. Ubemei gam mamshach hashaydi mitzvahs oz yibetach sashlemes, therefore, what we draw down through the mitzvahs then will be in the ultimate state of perfection. Why is that necessary? Because so when Mashiach comes, there should be the ultimate gilui, the ultimate drawing down of mitzvahs. It's al yidei kedimas hamshacha da mitzvahs k'mashu achshav. By doing the mitzvahs now meaning the whole era before Mashiach, especially in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, as we'll soon say, that draws down the revelation of the mitzvahs themselves, their high shayrish on their own. That is a preparation for the revelation that's going to come when Mashiach comes. And the Rebbe gives a very interesting note and a comparison. So he says in the brackets, line 12, to note, in a similar vein, we have that the mitzvahs of the Avos were a preparation for the mitzvahs after Matan Torah. That because of the mitzvahs of the Avos, that set the ball rolling, that there should be able to be the mitzvahs coming down by Matan Torah. So the Rebbe is like comparing it in a similar vein. That in a similar vein to the mitzvahs of the Avos being a preparation for the mitzvahs of Matan Torah, though they're incomparable, in a similar vein, all the mitzvahs we do now, times of Beis Hamikdash, times of Golus, is still a lead-in, a preface, a precursor, an introduction, a help, an assistance to be able to have the bittul, or to be able to have the gilui of the Hamshach of mitzvahs in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, in the times of Mashiach. Tomorrow we're going to speak about of this whole era before Mashiach's times, that the mitzvahs and the gilui of the mitzvahs is preparatory for the gilui that's going to take place when Mashiach comes. It's primarily the mitzvahs of the times of the Beis Hamikdash that prepares for that gilui, as we indicated before.